Hi everyone and welcome to the video. In this video we're going to be taking a look at my colour recipe on the Iron Warriors. This is on the new Mark III Space Marines for the Horus Heresy. Now obviously I'm going to be going over my colour recipe, however some of these colours you might not have, so I will below in the description, if you check that out, I've got 3 alternative colours that are from Games Workshop, Citadel colours, that you can use to achieve the same results. So first off, obviously we've primed it in black. This can either be any black primer of your choice, and then all we're going to do is, if you've got something like a big brush, like, I mean, these are the Artis Opus ones, and I know not everybody has them, but makeup brushes, you can pick up these ones online pretty cheap. They are really good, but you can get the makeup ones pretty cheap as well, or like a large flat brush, you'll get the same result as well. Now obviously I am using Gunmetal Grey by Vallejo Metal Colour to start off with, and I'm just working my way around because it is a nice thin paint. It goes on incredibly smooth, and I'm just literally dry brushing it all over the entire miniature. Now you might be asking, well, why aren't you using your airbrush on this and like undercoating it that way, or base coating it in leadbelcher? That's fine, you can do that. However, for me, dry brushing metallics over a black primer just achieves, for me, such a much better looking metal recipe and a look overall. Now the reason for that is, as you can sort of see us working right around your miniature, you're getting these tiny little like marks because of the dry brush, sort of going in and filling it, and to me it sort of adds, like, it's so simple to do it without going in and doing it via a brush, single-handedly adding all the scratches and stuff. You get these minute, tiny little like scratches and marks in it, which in my eyes just makes things look so much better and textured, and overall just gets a lot better look. And you sort of get like a pitting look on it as well, depending on how you apply it. But for the scale of the miniature, adding those scratches for me it's just a bonus to be able to do it this way. And I'd recommend applying, to any metal work, whether you start from a base coat upwards, is to use this dry brush method. And then next up we have Scale Colour 75 Thrash Metal. This is a really nice, fantastic paint. If you've not used Scale 75 before, I'd highly recommend those as well. And just repeating that same process of what we've just done, we're going to work our way around just catching the edge highlights this time. We're not going massively making sure we've done it all. We can leave a bit of the gunmetal grey into the shadows as well, but I'm literally just working my way around the entire miniature, dry brushing this on as well. And this recipe is so quick and so fast, you could get an army done of these in no time. Next up we have a 50-50 mix of the contrast paint Rattling Grime and the contrast medium. Now you can mix this on on your standard palette, but for me I like to mix mine, especially if I'm doing like a batch painting, inside one of these little well palettes. They're really cheap, you can get them for a few pound on Amazon. They've got magnets in case you want to magnetize them to any of your trays, or some of them just slot in. But yeah, mixing this, and depending on how dark that you actually want it, obviously I've got a bit too mad here with Rattling Grime, so I had a little bit more contrast medium. But if you do want to play around, if you want it a bit darker, so those recesses are a bit darker, feel free to add more Rattling Grime. God, that's a tongue twister. But literally we're just slapping this on around the entire miniature, and just working our way, moving around it. And what this does, it sort of tints it, adds a bit of like crevice washes without using like none oil or anything like that, and it also tints it. And because it's got that Rattling Grime, for me it's like an acrylic grime in a bottle. It's such a good, if you're trying to achieve that, the Grimdark style look. If you want to go for more like a really heavy rusted look, you could get some of the other contrast paints, like the flesh colour, the Glumman's Flesh, or I think it's called Dakaroth, or another flesh colour. They do some Gryph-hound oranges. You could experiment with those and mix a few together and mix it in with this and add that to it as well, just to tint it. And depends on how rusty and battle worn you want them to look. Another one which is really good is Gagrax Sewer. This is a nice rusty brown one, but it is very strong, so I won't recommend applying that straight away. I'd maybe use 80% contrast medium, 20% of that colour. But if you know this is a stage you don't have to do, but you can, you know, test and add a couple here and there, mix them all together if you want, and get some different variation going on around your miniature. Now you might have noticed when I did that shoulder blade, a little bit of the existing colour come off, and you can see I'm looking here thinking, what's just happened? But I'm not sure, I probably didn't let it dry enough. But what I will say is it sort of worked in my favour, because because we're on the shoulder blade, I'm going to be painting over that. However, just be careful to let your miniatures dry before you do that. But if it does happen, you know, you can dry brush off at top of it, and it'll add us a little bit of existing weathering. Next up, I'm just base coating all our yellow parts in Avalon Sunset. So I'm just literally going around and just base coating everything in Avalon Sunset, getting ready for our hazard stripes. And then I highlight that in Flash Glitz Yellow. Now if you want to do it in the way that I've taught in other videos, where you use like the scratchy effect for the highlights, you can do that, or simply use the dry brushing technique that we've done before, but being careful not to hit some of those edges. Then you can either use Snakebite Leather Contrast Paint or Agrax Earth Shade, and I've thinned this down maybe 50-50 with maybe a little bit more water than the actual contrast paint. And all I'm doing is pulling down. I'm not pulling up, because that'll deposit the pigment a bit further up, but I want to pull it down. And what'll happen, it'll just create, you might want to do a couple of layers of this. You're sort of glazing in a way, but either with the Agrax Earth Shade or Snakebite Leather, I'm literally just pulling down with a couple of layers on each shoulder blade. And what this does, it just creates a little bit of like grime, and also like a shadow transition coming down to the bottom of the shoulder blade. Now, for the hazard stripes, obviously a lot of people might struggle with this. There are a lot of tutorials out there online which teach this, you know, like using masking off and maybe other little methods, which is completely fine. But if you can see what I'm doing here, I sort of draw on one rough line, and I'll sort of sketch out the rough shape of it. I'm literally just freehanding these on, and you don't have to have a steady hand. You know, it is all about taking a little bit of time and having a little bit of patience. As you can see there, what I've just done with that first stripe is, because that line at the edge weren't straight enough, all I've done is just sort of gone down it at the side of it with like another line, and it's just a case of building it up. Now when it comes to the second one, you want to sort of try and get the most parallel gap and line that you can, especially when you're going to freehand them like this. Now what I tend to do is, so imagine that black stripe has got a line going up the middle of it, so that's the black line that I'm going to sort of draw on first, and then what you can do is you can build up the thickness of it on each side, and then just go in there with just tiny amounts on your brush. Don't overload your brush, and just tweak it and add little bits here and there. Now don't worry if it all goes wrong and you mess up a little bit, because you can disguise it as battle damage. So on here, obviously I'm a little bit braver when I'm doing it, so I can sort of judge that parallel line. Now obviously they're not perfect, they're not straight, but then again, you don't have to be, because we are going to weather them up a little bit later. So I know not a lot of people have, you know, like the masking tapes and other little ways of being able to do it, but I just sort of draw a basic one on, a little bit thinner than what the stripe needs to be, and then I just add lines at either end to adjust, you know, that straightness of it, and just build it up that way. Now obviously on the shoulder blades, I'm doing a bit thicker ones, which these ones are a little bit harder, but when it comes to the knee pad, I literally just do them with, I think, like maybe 1 or 2 strokes. It depends on how thick you want these lines. And once you've finished him, all it is a case of just literally going through, adding some little black scratches and little areas that might have been chips, and some little dabs and dots, and that sort of does disguise as well any inconsistencies in your work. It's also a good idea at this point as well, whilst you've got the blackout, is work your way around the miniature and black out any areas that require, you know, like the undergarments and stuff to be black as well, and then that's all ready for our next phase. And yep, you've guessed it, we're using MIG Dark Wash. Again, this, I know I always say this in every video, but I think it is a discontinued colour. You can still get it in some shops, but it is no different to AK Dark Brown Wash. So if you've got some of that, slap some of that on as well. and we're just literally slapping this on all the way around our miniature. Because it is an enamel, we can get our sponges or cotton buds or brushes and wipe this away a little bit later once it has dried. And it's just a case of, I thought I would apply it a little bit heavier towards the bottom, like where the knees are and the legs. But again, we can go into the alternative colours if we want to use rust streaks or mix in a bit of rust streaks with it. On some patches, feel free to do that as well. It all depends on, you know, how much of the weathering and stuff like that you want on the miniature. And then once you've wiped it off and done everything, give it about 10-15 minutes to dry, and we are ready for our final stages. Next up, after you've all done and dried up, I just go back to my thrash metal and very carefully on some of the, you know, higher points where the highlights will be, I just go in and dry brush a little bit more on, just to neaten up some areas and, you know, fetch that little bit of a shine back to certain areas, making it look a little bit more highlighted. And then finally, we have got one final piece of weathering, which, again, you've probably guessed it, it's Dirty Down's Rust. If you've never seen this, I swear by it, it's like magic in a bottle. It's probably the best rust products out there on the market. And just work your way around it, adding it here and there in different consistencies. I do have a 4-episode Rust Masterclass coming out very soon, which will be available on my Patreon. Depending on when you're watching this, it might either be on now or not. But as I said, at the release of this, it's not on just yet. Alternatives, you can use other like rust methods, like with the enamels and stuff, or if you want to go and check out a video that I did, which were 3 metallic colour recipes, only using acrylics and weathering it and stuff, completely using acrylics, then go and check out that video as well. It'll be on my channel, and you can also pinch maybe a couple of the metal colour schemes to put on that as some of the recipes, depending on which ones that you like. And that concludes our Iron Warriors. Now obviously in the future I'll be doing more in-depth ones where, you know, where you can get the hazard stripes absolutely amazing without freehanding them, and going over some of those methods. The base for this, which is how I sort of tend to do all my Horus Heresy ones, which was you can either use Sterling Mud or Dark Earth by AK, and then I've just got some pigment powders, dusted that on there and put a little bit onto the legs. So guys, I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have, please let me know in the comment section below. Hit that like button, and if you're not, I'd really love you if you could join us on this channel and be a subscriber. A massive thanks to all my members as well. There's a new little treat coming for members as a little thank you for everyone who supports this channel. I'm starting, it's like a behind the cameras vlog scene sort of thing, where it might be me sat at table talking about theory, behind the scenes, reviewing gear and going over gear. So if you're interested in that and want to become a member, you can do that by clicking the join button. So massive thanks again, and I shall see you all in my next video.